Elena Kalikas, a 36-year-old immigrant from Russia, seemed to be living the American dream. She was married to a successful businessman, Boris Kalikas, whose fortune was estimated at $3 million. The couple had two charming children, an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. The family lived in a luxurious mansion in the fashionable Tot Hill area on Staten Island, New York. However, problems lurked behind the outward glamour. Elena and 49-year-old Boris's marriage was falling apart. They often argued, especially about money. The police had received multiple calls about domestic violence at their home. But an even bigger blow to family happiness was Elena's passionate affair with 28-year-old Messiah Justice, an aspiring rapper with a criminal past. They met by chance, exchanging glances in the flow of cars on Manhattan's 7th Avenue, and exchanged phone numbers. Elena fell madly in love and showered Messiah with expensive gifts, money, and invitations to the best restaurants. She gave him 3 mobile phones, sneakers, tracksuits, and jackets worth over $500 each. Elena also secretly withdrew $85,000 in cash from the bank and gave it to her lover. Boris began to suspect something and hired a private detective to follow his wife. Soon he learned the bitter truth about her infidelity. In a rage, Boris threatened Elena with a divorce that would leave her penniless. He had no intention of sharing what he had earned through hard work. By that time, Elena couldn't imagine life without Messiah. She was accustomed to her wealth and didn't want to part with it. Fear of losing everything, passion, and desperation took over her, and a sinister plan began to form in her mind. March 24, 2000 became a fateful day in the Kalikas family's fate. Boris once again raised the issue of divorce, stating that he would leave his wife destitute. A heated argument broke out between them. Elena furiously grabbed the gun that Boris kept in the basement of their house. While the children slept peacefully on the 2nd floor, Elena went down to the basement after her husband. In anger, the woman shot Boris right in the back of the head with a large caliber pistol. He fell dead, a perfect hit. Realizing what she had done, Elena panicked. Hands and clothes covered in blood, she frantically grabbed the phone and called her lover. Messiah rushed over at her first call. Seeing Boris's body in a pool of blood, Justice was stunned at first. But Elena, sobbing, convinced him to help her. "Don't worry, darling, this is not your business. You're not involved. I'll take care of you. But you have to help me hide the body, because I would do the same for you," Messiah agreed. They wrapped the body in sheets, tied the legs with an extension cord. Together, they loaded the corpse into Elena's car and took it to an abandoned building in Brooklyn. There, the lovers disposed of the body, hiding it in a cardboard barrel. The next day, Elena went on a planned trip to Disneyland in Florida with the children, as if nothing had happened. She behaved as if nothing had happened. She only ordered a new carpet for the basement to cover up the bloodstains. From sunny Orlando, Elena called Messiah several times a day, about 100 calls in total. She anxiously asked if he had sorted everything out. "This is important. This is my life. His body must not be found," she whispered into the phone. And between calls, she pretended to be a happy mother on rides, holding the hands of her unsuspecting children. Her duplicity knew no bounds. Meanwhile, in New York, Messiah Justice decided to play it safe and rehide Boris's body, reasoning that the abandoned building was too unreliable a place. He transported the barrel with the corpse by barge to the shores of Jamaica Bay, on the border of Brooklyn and Queens, and dumped it in a swampy area. At the same time, Elena's life went on as usual. To thank her lover for his service, she made a down payment of $8,000 for a $300,000 Bentley, which she planned to give him. However, the check turned out to be uncovered. Elena returned to New York from Disneyland on March 28th, and only then reported her husband missing to the police, saying he had left home in the middle of the night and disappeared. Boris's car, a $125,000 Mercedes-Benz, was found abandoned near Brighton Beach. At first, detectives suspected that the Russian mafia might have been involved in the murder. But soon vigilant neighbors of the Kalikas told them about numerous family scandals, police calls, and Elena's infidelity. This led the cops to the trail of the unfaithful wife. On April 25th, Boris's body was found in a barrel by a passerby attracted by the stench. The remains were badly decomposed. The victim's hands were tied, and there was a large caliber bullet wound in the back of his head. It was impossible to determine the time of death. The police came with a search warrant to the Kilikis house. In the basement, experts found washed-out traces of blood, despite the new carpet. Forensic experts also found a large caliber bullet lodged in the wall. Detectives gave Elena a tough interrogation. She got confused in her testimony, changed her story, but eventually admitted to an affair with Messiah Justice. The cops ran him through the database and found out that he had been previously convicted. Under the pressure of evidence, Elena gave up and turned her lover in to the police. Messiah was detained on May 5th and interrogated rigorously. He quickly cracked and told how he helped Elena dispose of Boris's body, but he placed all the blame for the murder on her. Finding himself between a rock and a hard place, Justice hurried to make a deal with the prosecutor. His testimony formed the basis of the charges against Elena. The prosecution also had evidence such as the bullet in the wall, traces of blood, and phone conversations between the lovers. The 52-page indictment against Elena included charges of second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. State prosecutors claimed that Elena coldly shot her husband, fearing poverty and divorce, and wanting to continue her affair with Messiah. And after the murder, she allegedly staged a happy trip to Disneyland to divert suspicion from herself. She even gifted her lover an expensive Bentley in gratitude for concealing her horrific crime. Elena's jury trial began in June 2002. For 2 weeks, prosecutors methodically presented the collected evidence and clues. The key witness for the prosecution was Messiah Justice. In the courtroom, all eyes were on Messiah Justice, testifying against his former lover. A short, thin African-American with dreadlocks, dressed in an orange prison uniform, did not inspire confidence with his cunning squint and manner of speaking. Messiah described in detail, vividly, the events of that fateful night when Elena shot her husband and then asked her lover to help her cover up the crime. About her confessions to the murder and the famous conversation, "This is important, this is my life. His body must not be found. She always called me baby, and I was used to her bossing me around. So when she ordered me to shut up and help her hide the body, I just obeyed." Justice brazenly lied to the jury, shaking off the guilt. The prosecutor's strongest trump card was that very check for the first installment for the Bentley, which Elena wrote to Messiah the day after her husband's murder. In the eyes of the jury, this looked like payment for an accomplice's services. Elena's lawyers tried to discredit Messiah, calling him a false witness and a criminal who bought his freedom by slandering the defendant. But the jury found his testimony convincing enough in light of the other evidence. Elena herself never risked testifying in court, invoking the Fifth Amendment. Apparently, she did not hope to convince the jury of her innocence after the incriminating testimony of her former lover. The defense was built mainly on attacks on justice. The jury deliberated briefly, only 3 hours. They unanimously found Elena guilty of the premeditated murder of her husband. The sentence, from 22 years in prison to life imprisonment. When the judge read the verdict, Elena sobbed uncontrollably. A few months later, Messiah Justice was also sentenced, from 1 to 3 years for concealing a crime and obstructing justice. By that time, he had already served 6 months awaiting trial. And soon, Messiah disappeared altogether, failing to appear for the sentencing. However, Elena Kilikis could not accept such a severe punishment. Even behind bars, she continued to fight. In 2004, she got married right in prison to Sergei Ivanov, an immigrant from Russia, whom she met through correspondence. In 2012, after 10 years in a cell, Elena made a sensational confession in a TV interview. She claimed that it was Messiah Justice who shot her husband, and she only helped conceal the crime, succumbing to her lover's influence. This interview became the basis for a new trial. In 2015, the appeals court rejected Elena's petition for a case review due to lack of new evidence. Nevertheless, the convicted woman's lawyers have not lost hope of someday freeing her, or at least reducing her sentence. Elena Kilikis herself, who is now 57 years old, continues to serve her term in a federal women's prison in Connecticut. Her daughter and son grew up hardly knowing their mother. In rare interviews from behind bars, this woman invariably repeats that she regrets her actions and dreams of only one thing: to hug her children in freedom. Whether this dream will come true is a big question. Meanwhile, the Kalikas mansion in Toad Hill has long been sold to other owners. But even after 23 years, these walls must still hold the memory of the bloody family drama that destroyed several lives in an instant. The only reminder of the tragedy is Boris Kalike's modest gravestone in a Jewish cemetery on Staten Island. The same Boris, whose mutilated body lay at the bottom of the bay in an asphalt barrel during those days when his wife was having fun at Disney World with the children and her lover. The murder of Boris Kalike is rarely remembered these days. It has been lost among hundreds of other bloody stories in New York. But for all who are familiar with this case, it will forever remain a symbol of the American dream turned into an American nightmare. A story about how the pursuit of wealth, status, and passion can lead to an abyss if one crosses the line of humanity. About how the vices inherent in all of us, greed, lust, anger, can destroy even an outwardly perfect life. Elena Kalike still has many years to spend in confinement. But perhaps her main punishment is not the bars or the term. It's the agonizing realization that, in pursuit of elusive happiness, she destroyed with her own hands the only thing that had real value: her family and children. And this knowledge is more terrifying than any prison. Such is this dark, almost gothic story of murder, lies, and betrayal against the backdrop of the glitter and luxury of the Big Apple. A story about the American dream, for which a nightmarish price had to be paid. The story of Elena Kalike, a woman who seemed to have everything, but who lost the most important thing: